For most of his life, his world began before the sun. The alarm didn't scream. It didn't shock him awake. It simply spoke the same sentence it had spoken for decades. It's time. He would sit at the edge of the bed for a moment, not rushing, not trying to be dramatic about it, just gathering himself like a man who knew that every day meant effort, noise, weight, and work. He didn't see himself as a hero. He didn't think of himself as part of history. He was simply a man with a job, a man people depended on, a man who had learned long ago that in Detroit, work wasn't just what you did. Work was who you were. He'd wash his face, button his shirt, pull on the same jacket he had worn for years. Worn at the elbows, oil stains on the sleeves that never completely came out. Breakfast wasn't fancy. Coffee, toast, sometimes eggs, sometimes not. Routine wasn't boring. Routine was stability. Outside, mornings often felt cold, even when they weren't. Detroit mornings carry a kind of chill that isn't just weather. It's the quiet before noise. It's the stillness before machines come to life. He'd drive the same roads, past the same houses, past small stores that seemed frozen in time, past empty lots where something once stood, but nobody quite remembers what anymore. And then he'd see it, the factory, huge, alive, breathing steel and fire. People who never lived near an American car plant will never understand this feeling. To some, it's just a building. To others, it was a monster. But to men like him, it was a heartbeat. When he was young, seeing that factory stirred something inside his chest. Pride, responsibility, strength. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a politician. He didn't need to be. He helped build America's cars. And that meant something. He clocked in the same way every day. Not with excitement, not with dread, just with certainty. He knew where to stand, where his hands should be, where each part belonged. People think assembly line work is mindless. They're wrong. It's rhythm, it's timing, it's precision, it's trust. If you failed, you didn't just fail yourself. You failed the guy next to you. You failed the car. You failed the promise made to the person who would someday drive it. He learned early how to move with the line, how to feel the pulse of the place. Machines slammed, metal screamed, welds burned bright like small suns. Conveyors hummed like distant thunder. It was loud, yes, but to him, the noise wasn't chaos. It was order. There's a strange comfort in knowing exactly what your day will be. Not guessing, not improvising, just doing something hard, well, and knowing that it matters. The plant smelled like oil, hot metal, sweat, and sometimes smoke. People who worked there didn't talk about smells. They called it the air. This was simply what life smelled like. There were friendships there, not loud ones, not dramatic ones, simple ones. A nod in the morning, a half smile at lunch, a shared cigarette behind the loading dock when nobody was really supposed to be there. You didn't need deep conversations to feel connected. Being there together was enough. He raised a family on that job, paid a mortgage, bought groceries, put kids through school. Christmas happened because of that plant. Birthdays happened because of that plant. Medicine, shoes, school trips, baseball gloves. People like to talk about the economy like it's charts and numbers. For him, the economy was whether his kids slept warm at night. He didn't always love the work. There were days he was exhausted, days he wondered what else his life could have been, days when his back hurt so much he felt older than he really was. But here's the truth no headline ever captures. You don't have to love something to respect it. And he respected this job. Years turned into decades. He grew older, his hands rougher, his hair thinner and whiter. But the factory remained steady. It was always there, always loud, always working. Factories like this didn't close. That's what everyone thought. They were too big, too important, too permanent, or so it felt. Then something changed, but it didn't happen all at once. It rarely does. It started with small things. A conversation somebody overheard in the break room, a rumor in the hallway, a whisper disguised as a joke. Things are slowing down. They're moving some stuff. They might cut shifts. Nobody panics at first, because rumors have always existed. But rumors slowly grow teeth. He noticed fewer trucks coming in, shipments taking longer, production numbers on the whiteboards changing. Meetings started happening, not the usual quick ones. New people walking around in suits, clipboards, tablets, polite smiles. When managers start smiling too much, it usually isn't good news. The plant felt different. Not dead, just uneasy, like it knew something too, but couldn't say it. One morning, someone taped a paper to the bulletin board. People gathered around it the way people gather around a fire. Quiet, close, searching for warmth that isn't really there. You could feel it before you read it. Your stomach tightens. Your hands get still. Your body already knows, even before your eyes reach the words. Meetings were scheduled, mandatory attendance. Everyone came, not because they had to, but because they were afraid not to. A man in a suit spoke. He used careful words, soft words, corporate words, words like restructure, words like transition, words like global shift, words like unfortunate realities. But behind all of it, there was only one truth. The line was going to stop. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it was coming. And when a line stops, it isn't just machines that go silent. Lives do too. Men who had worked there for 20, 30, 40 years stood still, not angry, not yelling, just quiet. Quiet like grief. Quiet like when a doctor says something you hoped they'd never say. Quiet like losing someone, even though they're still in the room. He went home that night, but home felt different. He sat at the table, food in front of him, almost untouched. His wife asked what was wrong. He didn't know how to answer. How do you explain that the ground beneath your life just moved? Not fast, not violent, just enough that nothing feels stable anymore. Days went on. People pretended things were normal, because pretending is easier than falling apart. But the truth kept coming closer. Letters arrived, announcements made, deadlines set, and then there was a last day. You'd think it would be loud. You'd think people would scream or cry or throw things. But instead, it felt like a funeral without a casket. People shook hands a little longer. They hugged, even men who never hugged. They laughed at jokes that weren't funny, because sometimes laughter is the only thing holding tears back. He stood at his station one last time. His hands rested where they had rested for decades. Not working, just remembering. He listened, not to noise, but to the absence of it. Silence can be heavier than sound. And when the line finally stopped, for the first time in his life, he didn't know what tomorrow was. Not really. He walked out of the plant, turned back, looked at the building, and saw not just metal and walls, but his past, his youth, his strength, his pride, his mistakes, his victories, his entire working life, standing still in front of him. And then he left, because there was nothing else to do. When the plant closed, nobody told him what to do the next morning. He woke up at the same time anyway. The body doesn't forget routine that easily. His alarm rang, and his mind reacted the only way it knew how. It's time, except it wasn't. There was nowhere to go, nowhere he was needed, no gate waiting for him, No noise to walk into, just quiet. He sat at the edge of the bed again, like always, but this time the moment didn't pass. There was no reason to stand. For years, he had imagined retirement as freedom, fishing, rest, time, maybe a slower, gentler life. But this wasn't freedom. This felt like falling without moving. He made coffee. The house sounded different now. The refrigerator hum felt louder. The tick of the clock wasn't background noise anymore. It was a reminder. Time was still moving, even if he wasn't. He tried to keep himself busy at first, fixing small things around the house, organizing tools, helping neighbors, finding excuses to stay useful. But eventually, you run out of broken things to fix. His world got smaller. The town changed too. Places that once depended on the plant began to fade. The diner where workers used to crowd at 6 a.m., empty. The bar that once felt like release at the end of shift, quiet. Shops closed one by one. Parking lots stayed empty. Houses went up for sale, and sometimes just stayed that way. People left. Those who could found work somewhere else. Those who couldn't stayed. Staying didn't make them weak. It just meant this place wasn't just where they lived. It was who they were. He'd drive by the plant sometimes. Not intentionally. Not because he wanted to torture himself. Just because the road had been part of his life for so long that his hands turned the wheel out of memory, not thought. The building still stood, but it didn't feel alive anymore. Grass started growing where trucks once drove. Dust settled where engines once roared. Windows darkened. Gates chained. Silence doesn't just exist. It spreads. He saw old co-workers occasionally. Not at the plant. At grocery stores. Gas stations. Doctors' offices. They all wore the same expression. Something between strength and loss. They talked about normal things. How you been? How's the family? Keeping busy. Nobody said what they were really thinking. I don't know who I am without that job. People like to say, you're more than your work. And maybe that's true. But what if your work was the thing that held your world together? What if it was the anchor? What if it was the proof that you mattered? The truth is simple. He didn't miss the machines. He missed purpose. Days blurred together. He noticed how long the afternoons felt now. He noticed how different the house sounded when his wife wasn't home. He noticed how quiet his phone stayed. Nobody needed him urgently anymore. No call saying, we need you on third shift. We need help on the line. We can't do this without you. Silence has a way of asking questions you don't want to answer. Who am I now? What do I do? What is a man supposed to be when the thing he's done his whole life is gone? He had time now. Too much of it. He would sit sometimes, not sad exactly, just thoughtful, thinking about years gone by, thinking about faces he worked beside who weren't here anymore, thinking about the days when the plant felt like it would last forever. Funny thing is, when you're young, you think the hardest part of life is working. Later, you realize the hardest part is when the work ends. There were good moments too. Moments with family, moments of laughter, moments where the weight wasn't quite so heavy. He watched his grandchildren grow. He felt pride again, a different kind of pride. Not the pride of strength, the pride of presence. Being there, watching, seeing life continue, even when yours had slowed. He started to understand something with time. That factory was a chapter of his life, a big one, an important one that shaped everything. But it wasn't the whole book. He wasn't just the work he did. He wasn't just a pair of hands on a line. He wasn't just part of a machine. He was a father, a husband, a friend, a man who showed up, a man who did what needed to be done, a man who built something real, not just cars, but a life. People like him rarely make history books. They don't get statues. They don't get speeches written about them. But towns existed because of men like him. Families survived because of men like him. The world kept moving because of men like him. And that mattered. Even if the line stopped, even if the gates closed, even if the factory fell silent, his years weren't wasted. His life wasn't small. His work wasn't forgotten. It lived. In every mile driven in the cars he helped build. In every roof he helped keep standing. In every child who slept warm because of his effort. And maybe that was enough. He didn't need applause. He didn't need headlines. He didn't need anyone to tell him he was important. He knew, quietly, deeply, without saying it out loud. And in a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, his story remains. A story of work, of dignity, of identity, of loss, and of finding something like peace after the noise fades. A story of an ordinary life. That mattered before we forgot.